Well, good morning from old Route 66 in the fabulous Tucumcari, New Mexico. Of course, I just finished a whole trip on Route 66, but you know what? There's no better way to get back home than the old Mother Road. You know, after 6 weeks of being away from my own bed, I was getting pretty tired, so I spent a couple of nights here at the Roadrunner Lodge, my favorite Route 66 motel, to edit, get some rest, stare at the working lava lamp in my room. But now I'm refreshed as I'm gonna get, so it's time for me to leave Tucumcari and hit the road. Now, Tucumcari is a sweet stop, but I can't stay forever, and I must say that the best part of Tucumcari is feeling like you have the whole place to yourself. And just as I was trying to decide whether to linger in town for a bit or head out and take the road less traveled, all of a sudden I saw Route 66 filling up because the Route 66 Centennial Caravan has just pulled into town, going from Santa Monica to Chicago. This whole big group of people are all traveling Route 66 together. A lot of them are rolling through in classic cars, including this beauty that Reese Martin of the Oklahoma Route 66 Association is driving, who just handed me, by the way, a sick exclusive Route 66 Centennial Caravan pin. Thanks, Reese. And now they're all over here with Robert from the Blue Swallow, taking some fun pics and getting an official tour of Route 66's most famous motor court. I don't know whether the caravan is actually staying in town tonight or not. If they are, man, they must have every room in town booked. But it's kind of cool seeing a giant group of people all rolling up together, filling up the highway for that brief moment. It's as romantic and sort of empty looking as Route 66 can be, even in a town like Tucumcari. You know this thing was jam-packed with cars and unsafe for pedestrians back in the heyday. It's kind of cool. It's like a little window into the past. All right, they're just wrapping up their tour and conferring about how they're going to take their big group photo. I was visiting Billy and Beto the Burros over here. I left these here years ago, and they're still hanging out behind the Blue Swallow, which means no matter what happens, I always have a couple of friendly faces to see in Tucumcari. Even if David from the Roadrunner or Rob and Dawn from the Blue Swallow moved on. Oh, and speaking of the Blue Swallow, by the way, I was in the Blue Swallow last night standing in the lobby when the power went out to the whole town. So it's the first and only time I've ever seen the Blue Swallow neon not lit up at night. The whole town was dark. Back at the Roadrunner, there was no light, no power, so we all kind of just sat around the campfire for a while. But the power did eventually come back on, and look at this. What a fun one. The neon is on. Not that you can tell in the sunlight, but it would just feel wrong if it wasn't. That was just such cool and random timing. I was literally ready to just roll away from Tucumcari, and then wha-bam, the caravan I've been hearing so much about just rolls right in, and it turns out I have a bunch of friends on the caravan. Dude, and it's nice to see Tucumcari's businesses filling up with Route 66 travelers, and you just know they're all here to see this place because, of course, Clint Eastwood stayed here. Now, I want to linger because I love Tucumcari, but I just filmed a long video in Tucumcari a couple of weeks ago, behind the scenes in a Route 66 town, about a lot of the new projects that are coming together along old Route 66. So I guess it's fine that we're going to save it for another visit. And being here the last couple of nights, staring at the TP Curios right here, has really inspired me to see a little more of the Old West before I head all the way home to California. So I'm going to head out of here and take the road less traveled down south of Tucumcari to see one of the most famous sites in the Old West, right after I say goodbye to one more Tucumcari friend that's close to my heart. It's the Helk!
Fear me!
I do fear you, almighty Helk!
Depart from my town!
I'm going!
You know, I'm really gonna miss that guy. He's the only one who asks how the Helk feels.
Oh, look at that over at La Plaza Court. There's a whole caravan of little camper trailers, a separate caravan, believe it or not. This town ain't big enough for two caravans and me. So it's time to do what we do best and hit the road. Dude, it feels so wrong to pull away from Route 66, especially seeing the caravan coming through, doing what I just finished doing a month ago. It makes me want to jump on board. I'm joining the caravan. But turn away we must. And after all, if I have anything to say about it, it's not like I won't be back. It's so weird pulling up to the pilot here, because it's like I suddenly traveled forward in time. But I have got to fuel up, and not just fuel up the car, but fuel up on coffee as well. Because if the place we're going is anything like I remember it being, the road down there ain't got nothing on it at all. Oh, I better scrub my windshield off too. My broken windshield. I don't know how well you can see that crack, but that's not gonna be cheap. All right, fuel has been procured, coffee has been secured. I guess there's no excuse left now. Dude, rolling out of town, there's a couple of houses, but south of Tucumcari, man, seriously? These roads become like the back roads of all back roads. Dude, even in sort of the well-populated part of this drive, closer to Tucumcari, I think I've only passed one car in like 12, 13, 15 miles, something like that. And then as the road rises over some of the little mesas and hills out here, suddenly descends on the other side into a valley of absolutely nothing. This is interesting though, because just before a little bit of a turn here, right on top of this mesa, check this out over here. We are in Ragland, New Mexico, which is established out here about the turn of the last century, 1906, 1907, somewhere in there. I believe it was founded by a guy named Tom Ragland, who established a little general store and post office out here and made his wife Maud into the first postmaster. And clearly the town didn't grow up into much. I can see a couple of abandoned looking houses around here. I was trying to figure out who owns this area. I mean, it's a little bit cleaned up. Look at the little porch right there where I assume once upon a time, maybe they had some gas pumps out here at the general store. They certainly had some Pepsi. I like that. And at the side of the building, pretty darn large. So at one time, you know, probably had a lot of product in there, a lot of seed and feed and supplies for the people living out here. You can actually see jars on the counter in there. I desperately want to go peek through the windows, but somebody's taking care of this place, you know. And in this part of New Mexico, where there's bullet holes in every sign, it's always better to exercise caution. Of course, you never can tell, but it really doesn't seem like anybody's living up here at the moment. And other than the sound of the wind, man, it is deadly quiet up here. Basically, if you were to head just due south in a straight line without any turns, you wouldn't hit any cities on the way to Mexico except maybe Pecos, Texas. There's a handful of little ranch communities down here, but pretty much nothing else. To the point where the last time I was driving on this road in reverse, by the time I got to Ragland, I was like, oh, thank God, civilization. Dude, it's easy to say there's more cows than people out here, but I think there's more windmills than people out here too. And there ain't that many windmills. Dude, traffic on this road was so unexpected. For a second, I thought this was a mirage. Look at this massive tractor. Thank goodness he pulled over for me, this cowboy here. Give him a little wave there. He's on a cell phone. You ever seen a cowboy on a cell phone? That's like one of the only dudes I've seen out here. I gotta admit, as eager as I am to get home, this is my favorite kind of day, driving out to places where the cows look surprised to see ya. And I keep getting surprised at every little crossroads to find kind of old abandoned looking buildings, especially right here at this little quiet crossroads. An operational post office. Look how tiny that thing is. From McAllister, New Mexico. Not that there's too much to the place. More cows than people, like I say. I've seen a few ranch houses scattered around, but I was still surprised to see that post office open for business. I don't know if I watched the Muppet movie or Pee-wee's Big Adventure too much as a child or what, but I just love road trips. I particularly love when you get on the small highways or the back roads, like New Mexico 252 out here. These wide open skies, wide open spaces. Being out here makes it hard to go home where they try to tame me and civilize me. Everybody's trying to fence you in and control you with a calendar. Let's meet here, let's go there, see you next Thursday. No. That's why I appreciate days like this, you know? I have no idea where I'm gonna end up, just out on the open road, wandering. All right, as much fun as I've had seeing the beauty and wonder of the New Mexico backroads and making friends with every future hamburger in America, I finally met up with US 60 and reached my destination, Fort Sumner, New Mexico, or what at least used to be Fort Sumner, New Mexico. Just back here, beyond this fence, a U.S. Army fort set up basically to imprison the Navajo and the Mescalero Apache that had been forced to march out here and camp beside the Pecos River in one of the greatest tragedies in old Western history. They could not adapt to the climate, to the land. And on this reservation that they established here called Bosque Redondo, they faced starvation and disease before finally being able to go home. And then the old Fort Sumner was sort of abandoned as just a little ranching town, a small farming community, and became the perfect place for outlaws to hide out, including one of the most famous outlaws in the Old West who met his end at old Fort Sumner and is buried right behind this building, none other than the one, the only, Billy the Kid. And after escaping from the Lincoln County Courthouse in April 1881, Billy the Kid fled out here to hide out from the law. But it only took a few months for Sheriff Pat Garrett and his posse to track him down here to his friend Pete Maxwell's house. And after creeping up on him at the site of the old fort here just after midnight, they shot Billy the Kid dead. And he was buried out here at the old Fort Sumner Post Cemetery. His original gravesite was marked only by a plain wooden cross, but today, what can only be described as a very lovingly restored cemetery, is protected by a gigantic metal cage. And here it is, right there. The tombstone of Billy the Kid, which is not only inside of this giant metal cage right here, along with a couple of Billy's pals' graves, but as you can see, the headstone itself is also encased in its own kind of iron bars down there. And that is because in 1951, Billy the Kid's headstone was stolen and not retrieved until 1976 when they found it out in Texas, and then it was restored to the cemetery here and then stolen again in the 1980s, although this time just for a couple of days before it was discovered in Huntington Beach, California, of all places. And the governor of New Mexico actually sent the local sheriff out to Huntington Beach to get the tombstone himself, bring it back here, and then place it in these shackles at Billy's feet, where it has remained ever since 1981, blissfully undisturbed since that time. Look at this. Got some coins out here, a live bullet, got a handkerchief. Somebody has placed a lock on the grave. Billy the Kid, man, king of the bandits, immortalized in old Western dime novels and the pages of newspapers, comic books, novels, movies. Today he lays out here quietly with two of his pals, Tom O'Folliard and Charlie Beaudry, two of the guys that were with him in some of his most famous gun battles and escapades, if indeed they lie under these three slabs right here and not elsewhere in the cemetery. But of course, the best science, the best history places them, indeed, right here in these graves. Now, there have been all kinds of other rumors about Billy the Kid surviving and Pat Garrett being in on it and somebody else being shot over here in the Maxwell house. But the best evidence all points to this indeed being the actual grave of Billy the Kid, aka William H. Bonney, aka Henry McCarty or Henry Antrim. He had a lot of names in the Old West. It is a hard place to get to, but kind of fitting that I came back here on a Route 66 trip because, of course, back in the heyday of Route 66, seeing the grave of the Billy the Kid would have been a major attraction, especially for kids who were into Western comics and stories and old Western TV shows. An hour and a half drive down from Tucumcari to come see this wouldn't have been such a big deal back then. But today, although people still have heard of Billy the Kid, I feel like the legend is much less strong, at least as a pull for children. And Fort Sumner is much farther off the beaten path than it sort of used to be. Having said that, this is actually my second time out here at the grave of Billy the Kid, whose friend, Pete Maxwell, by the way, is in a grave just over yonder. And this is one of those historic graves where we actually know who is here. There are plenty of other people that Billy would have known buried in the cemetery. It's the second time I've been here because a few years ago, I went down to Lincoln County to explore the history of Billy the Kid. I still think that's one of the best Random Mind episodes that I've ever made. And in this very cemetery, at the end of that adventure, I was flying a drone over the cemetery and got a little too close to Billy the Kid's grave and actually broke it right against the iron bars up there. Look at this. Here's Jesus Silva over here, one of Billy the Kid's pallbearers. You see, the locals remembered burying him. They were friends of Billy's. They knew where he was buried, and ultimately there's no reason really to doubt that Billy the Kid was here or where his grave was located, but it was contested for years because, of course, old Western records can be spotty. And also, in 1949, a man from Texas named Brushy Bill Roberts claimed that he was actually Billy the Kid who had lived under an alias and survived the shooting here at Fort Sumner. But the research has been done, and the vast majority of historians deny the claims of Brushy Bill. So the real Billy the Kid is still lying here at Fort Sumner, New Mexico, on the edge of the old Fort Sumner property, which is now the Bosque Redondo Memorial, which is closed today. Otherwise, I would have gone in there. And here he lies peacefully with his headstone intact, laying beside his pals. I hope they bury me and my friend George and Tyler like this one day. Just a couple of pals who lived a pretty hard and fast, a crazy and interesting life. A lot of good books out there now about Billy the Kid that are much more factual than the stuff you would have picked up in the 1950s. And although the old fort buildings where he was killed are no longer available out here to visit, and the old trading post adjacent to the cemetery is now closed and has, I believe, become the Chamber of Commerce out here in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, or is at least owned by the Chamber of Commerce. I think as a gift shop it closed down because there were no longer enough visitors coming out here just to see the grave of Billy the Kid. It is not the only attraction worth seeing in town, because just up the road in the modern Fort Sumner, New Mexico, 1 block west of the Super 8 Motel, is the Billy the Kid Museum. So I'm gonna head up the road 3 miles and go check it out once again. The last time I went there, I got there with about 30 minutes to spare, so I didn't have time to take as hard of a look as I wanted. And they're pretty accurate directions, because look, there's the Super 8 and there's the museum yonder. And for the roadside connoisseur, the museum itself is quite an attraction, because if I remember correctly, it all grew out of the personal collection of just one guy, Ed Sweet, and his wife Jewel, who began collecting old Western artifacts from the towns all around the area, and originally opened this museum in 1953. And despite the decline in numbers of American families who go on road trips down old highways in New Mexico, and despite the sort of loss of popularity of Western movies, music, and books, it has been going strong out here ever since. And dude, look at this. Would you look at the size of that pistol? The barrel's bigger than my head. Oh, and it looks like the pistol's actually telling me a different story, that this was established a year earlier in 1952. And look at that, that's not the only gun sitting out here. It's got an absolutely massive field cannon and a couple of fun photo op stagecoaches for the kids, as well as, you can see the hole right there, a fun Billy the Kid photo op. Look, Ma, I'm buried in Fort Sumner. Dude, excellent. I love a good small town or local museum in any context, and when it's one built with a bunch of petrified wood and old rocks and Western artifacts by one guy as a roadside attraction in the 1950s, and is still open in the 21st century, and I believe owned by the original family, how do you go wrong? It doesn't get much better than that. Luckily, it appears to be open. Oh, dude, where else can you see a carved wooden Billy the Kid, right? That's amazing. He's even got those weird teeth on him. Ah, sweet. It is good to be back. Although I gotta be honest with you, I never thought I would be back this way again. I love that the guest book is sitting on top of some old cowboy legs. Man, look at this collection of artifacts that actually came from the old Fort Sumner. There's a bunch of stuff that was found later on the site. Some of the furniture from the old fort, photos of the grounds, and even an original portrait of the man who bought the property, whose son was buddies with Billy the Kid. And this whole place is packed wall to wall with local artifacts. It's amazing. We got a life-size blow-up of the only confirmed known photo of Billy the Kid. Lots of paintings of him and some of the scenes from his life on the wall. Some information about Ed Sweet, the founder of the museum. Newspaper articles about the time they tried to move Billy the Kid's remains out of here. Also some testimony from living witnesses that he did in fact die and was in fact buried in that cemetery. Look at this. Some of the other photos purported to be Billy the Kid. They say this one is Billy right there, the guy playing croquet. There's another one right here that supposedly has Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett in it together. And then a painting of the night Billy the Kid was shot. There's a portrait of the man who did the shooting, Pat Garrett himself. A painting of the funeral. Dude, and all of this is just in the first room. This isn't even in the Billy the Kid room yet. Enter here to see Billy the Kid's rifle. This is the heart of the old museum here, and dude, I've never seen so many paintings of Billy the Kid in my life. Billy and Pat Garrett and everything else. There's so many artifacts hiding in the wings on each side of this, and we'll get to all of them, but first look at that. Look at that cool old entrance sign to the Billy the Kid Museum. But right here, this is the main attraction, the Billy the Kid room, and oh boy, there are a whole bunch of artifacts in here. Look at this. This curtain hung over the door where the kid was killed. This rock right here came from one of Billy the Kid's hideouts at Stinking Springs, and supposedly he carved his name into this rock. It's worth mentioning that some of these things are disputed. This right here was the actual door that Billy the Kid was backing through the night that he got shot. The bullet holes are unrelated, but that is a pretty incredible thing to have. And then another one, another curtain that hung over the window in the room where Billy the Kid was killed. I think the main attraction in this room is Billy the Kid's rifle. Supposedly that rifle right there was his. The story goes that he gave it to one of his friends 2 months before he was killed. Dude, and if that's true, that thing right there that we are looking at is absolutely absolutely priceless. There's one of the original wanted posters that Governor Lew Wallace printed up for Billy the Kid. A check used by the Murphy Company down there in Lincoln, New Mexico. And supposedly, these are all things handed down from the locals and collected by Mr. Sweet. Supposedly, these are a pair of Billy the Kid's chaps and spurs. There's another spur right there collected actually from one of Billy's pallbearers, Jesus Silva. And this little bag underneath supposedly contains locks of Billy the Kid's hair. Not something I'd want to keep in my living room, but you know, to each their own. You got photos of all the people in the Billy the Kid saga, a lot of the early books and magazines and sort of pop culture ephemera of Billy the Kid. A travel box that was owned by his boss, John Henry Tunstall. That's pretty wild. And there's a lot of information and artifacts from some of the other characters involved, not just in the Billy the Kid saga, but the early New Mexico history. And on the opposite wall to Billy's rifle, a whole bunch of other guns, handcuffs, watches, spurs, and badges. Man, Mr. Sweet collected so many rifles. They literally had to pile some of them up on the floor down there. All right, coming to the back of the room. Look at this. You can see why I'm moving through so quickly. This place is absolutely full of every kind of Western artifact imaginable, going back all the way to like Native American grinding stones and fossils and mastodon jawbones and God knows what, to old 19th century clocks and glassware brought out here by pioneering families, to Barbie dolls, early Barbie dolls somebody owned out this way. And I love that the museum's gone meta and even includes a lot of artifacts like souvenirs from the museum from the 1950s, strange clay figures purportedly found in caves here in New Mexico, an extremely old and probably very haunted Victorian mirror. I love this. I love this early advertisement right here. Time to see the Billy the Kid Museum, Fort Sumner, New Mexico. Amazing. I love this old clock right here. Look at that. Time to see the Billy the Kid Museum, Fort Sumner, New Mexico. That's hard to see through the double glass glare right there, but these spurs right here are supposedly spurs that were once owned by Pancho Villa, one of the members of his gang. No sign there for the sombrero, but that is an original old sombrero indeed. An old regulator clock over here, a bunch of World War I and World War II helmets, including some German war trophies and just tons and tons of old glass lamps and decanters. And look at this, even more guns. Bunch of spurs in here, couple cow skulls, old saddles and uniforms. I don't know this for a fact, but it definitely feels like I'm the only person in the museum right now, so it's a little bit creepy in here. Yeah, a little too quiet. It's a little too quiet. A little too raff. See what I'm saying? Okay, luckily the museum continues in a much noisier fashion out this door, a much noisier and warmer fashion under this sort of enclosed porch where the Western artifacts are just never ending. Dude, look at the size of this trap right there. It's big enough for everybody's mother-in-law. Look at this calf born with a whole bunch of extra legs out here on display on the porch. They got wagons, they've got tools, they got woodworking equipment, an old barber chair, a bunch of original cattle brands right here. None of these things are reproductions. And then what's going on inside of this barn over yonder? A whole bunch of saddles and cowboy hats. We got ropes, we got the devil's rope, we got barbed wire right there. This place is just absolutely bizarre and kind of freaky. Oh, look at this, a child's casket made in the early 1900s. How charming and sweet. There's a very creepy, haunted looking chair right there. A whole bunch of coffee grinders and paper cutters and goodness knows what else. I guess those are actually probably cigar cutters, right? What are those? Oh yeah, they're cigar cutters for chopping like the whole cigar. And a big old chopper right up there, man. I don't know what that's for. Hopefully not the hands of the cowboy's enemies. And then look at this, there's just a whole room full of cameras and typewriters, old sewing machines. Hey, a whole bunch of old Western movie posters, mostly to do, obviously, with Billy the Kid. You can see it's a very popular story. Even Billy the Kid versus Dracula in here. Great freaking movie. The only flaw with it is that it stars John Carradine instead of Bela Lugosi. But still, dude, Billy the Kid versus Dracula. I love and appreciate that they have some old Western toys and sort of action figures in here, right? They have a little bit of everything, a whole bunch of cap guns on the wall, just like anything and everything. Model trains, you got some old Victor telegraphs out here, and if you stop and read all the signs, it'll tell you like which local family they came from or which weird western town. This is basically just the beginning of it. This museum just keeps going and going and going and going. We've got the entire life story of Billy the Kid laid out here in these murals along one wall, which are all absolutely deliciously hand painted. I don't know when they were painted, but definitely a long time ago. That is not AI art right there, man. Somebody spent the time to do that. And you've got the whole kind of mock barn set up over here across the way. So many old, authentic old Western lanterns and grindstones and saddles and wheelbarrows. And once again, I'm like the only, I have not seen one other guest, one other customer in here, although there were cars in the parking lot. So I'm feeling a little bit like I stepped into an episode of The Twilight Zone, you know? Got all kinds of old wagon wheels in here and yokes and equipment for the horses, I guess barrel making stuff. I don't know what these things are. So many old wood burning stoves. This is a weird replica of the San Miguel Mission. A mail container from the Santa Fe Railroad. Ancient John Deere farm equipment. Dude, and it just keeps going and going and going. This is an absolutely insane collection. Railroad safes, old stoves, old ice boxes, a weird hybrid lawnmower, bicycle, motorcycle contraption built by a local resident after they took away his driver's license. He needed something to move around on. And I have never seen such a huge collection of giant cooking pots in my life. Look how massive those things are. Got a lot of old wagons and buggies in here. I gotta be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure the difference between a wagon and a buggy, so we'll just call them all wagons. And a very ornate old hearse with a very tiny coffin inside. But mostly, it's just super surreal having the place all to myself. And now that we're sort of in a kind of indoor-outdoor area, the only sound I hear other than those fans and sort of dehumidifiers back there is the sound of chirping birds out by the absolute main attraction of the museum, the marquee piece out here, the replica gravestone, or I should say gravestones, of Billy the Kid. Look at this. They've perfectly replicated the grave out here without the giant iron cage around it, just with a simple chain link fence out here. And this way you can actually get a much better look at what Billy the Kid's tombstone, the one that kept getting stolen, actually says. It says, "The boy bandit king, he died as he had lived." On the top it says truth and history, and then 21 men, I guess for the 21 men Billy the Kid supposedly put down. And then there's a recreation of the Pals headstone and the 3 slabs out there. There's also a couple of other replica graves. Look at this, even an old jail cell out here. And even though the bars are authentic and Billy the Kid's name is scratched into the wall behind them, the sign in here says, "The bars in this cell came from Dawson, New Mexico, a mining town in the northern part of the state. The jail cell was built here as a photo op for people to enjoy. It has nothing to do with Billy the Kid." Well, at least we can use our imaginations, right? Dang, getting hot out here. Now, as you can see, all around this courtyard are a whole bunch of doorways, one to continue your journey through the museum and on to the very sizable gift shop. But on the other side of the courtyard, I can't even remember what's in here. Likely something you'll never see anywhere else. Oh, surprise, surprise. Some more glass, some more typewriters. Some of them are like word processors or from even later. Yeah, this is the strangest collection absolutely ever. Look at dishes donated by Gloria and Tino in Sudan, Texas. So I guess a lot of people back in the day would visit the museum and go, "We got some old glass stuff we could donate." It's the freakiest, weirdest thing. And maybe it's just because it's a Monday and there's nobody else around. Look at all these ice boxes in here, by the way. The refrigerators of the past. Oh, there's even a GE refrigerator from 1939, an electric one. I don't know, something about it being so quiet today makes me feel like I stumbled across like an abandoned building with all this stuff in it. I feel like I'm trespassing. It's the strangest collection of stuff ever. Don't get me wrong, it has plenty of original Billy the Kid artifacts and information, old photos and paintings to be absolutely worth the $8 admission and be worth the time of he who comes here for Billy the Kid only. But there's so much other weird, strange, unusual, and sometimes even unexplained stuff in here. It's just worth it for the intrepid road trip fanatic and roadside attraction lover as well. I love this place. I love that it's still family owned. I love that somebody decided we need a whole bunch of washing machines of different kinds from different eras. We got to show people how they used to wash. And I must say the artifacts in here are impressive because that right there is a broom making machine according to the sign. And I must say I have never seen a broom making machine from back in the day one time in my life. Yeah, I love places like this. I'd love to own a place like this one day. Look at this old blacksmith shop display, which is all kind of glassed in. Oh, that's cool. Look at this old Phillips 66 sign just rusting down there in the ground. Now, I'm not 100% sure I would like to live in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, particularly. But to own something like this, one of those eclectic, crazy roadside attraction collections, it would be something. All right, we got a whole bunch of, look at that. Look at that. It's the old, what's it called? The mail truck of the day, a U.S. mail buggy from 1890. I don't know what this is supposed to be other than an ancient hole puncher. I'm sure there's some sort of rhyme and reason to all this. Oh, now we can see the inside of the blacksmith shop there. But it's hard to figure it all out now. Look at the old homestead in here. We got the kitchen table, got another ice box, got some more coffee grinders and meat grinders back there, an old pump, the old bed. And then finally, the entrance to the part that I remembered the best from my last visit, the antique auto section, which is blissfully, once again, air conditioned. Trust me, it was better having those fans in there than not having them. I tell you, they are not more powerful than the humid New Mexico weather right now. Look at that old 1923 Ford Model T truck with the Billy the Kid Museum advertisement on the side. I love that. Got a nice visible gas pump in here, a couple of oil tanks from old gas stations. Here's a 1917 Ford truck. I mean, that dates all the way back to World War I, basically. Ooh, a beautiful old Schwinn, is it, in the back? An old bicycle? Look at this guy right here. Has his 100th birthday this year, a 1926 Ford Roadster. I'd love to go ripping down the roads out here in that thing. 1923 Chevrolet touring car. What's this? 1926 Ford touring car. So a couple of touring cars just parked up together, remembering the old days. Here's an old Willys Aerolark. I love those 1950s cars, man. That's probably 1952, it says on the sign. There's a Kaiser Manhattan. Now, that is a car you don't see every day. Hey, look, there's some stuff for sale in here, some old artifacts. They're up for sale if you want them. And there's one of those creepy old coat rack / chair things, a couple of haunted mirrors here. So if anybody's interested in getting some old Western items right out of the museum here, it says, talk to the clerk at the front register. That's definitely an old Studebaker back there. Look at the style. Look at the two-tone back there. Lots of body styling. They don't make them like they used to. Look at this old feller in his truck there. He's just been waiting for this guy to move for generations. Ooh, I didn't even notice the old bone shaker, penny farthing, big wheel bike back there on the back wall. 1930 Model A Ford Coupe with rumble seat, it says. There's an old 1923 Dodge truck. I'd love to own an old car like that, or at least go ripping around in it for a while, right? I've never driven a Model T. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever even ridden in a Model T or a Model A. I was going to ride in a Model T at the Greenfield Village at the Henry Ford out there, but alas, it never happened. The line was too long when I was there. I just love that the museum ends randomly with cool old cars and random old automotive stuff, kind of bringing me back to my Route 66 theme. And once I leave Fort Sumner, I'm going to have to cruise up and meet back up with Route 66, or at least I-40 along the old path of Route 66, and head home to California. But first, the gift shop over here, and hopefully a restroom somewhere on the premises. Wow, dude, this gift shop is huge. And look at this. I've never seen a life-size Billy the Kid like this. The sign on the bottom says, please do not touch Billy, so I won't touch him. I'll just gaze up into his teeth, the only teeth weirder than mine in this town. He's always got some kind of look to him, Billy the Kid. That's impressive, though. Oh, I didn't even notice the sign at first. Take a fun pic with Billy. Dude, and there's a whole bunch of mugs out here, customized with your name right on them. You know who loves Billy the Kid is my friend George. I'll get him this mug. Gotta figure out where to pay for it, and then figure out where the restroom is, and then move on down the road. Dude, that was kind of excellent, dude. Random artifacts, a wood card, Billy the Kid, a whole bunch of hand-painted stuff. Much better than random AI. I got a mug for my friend George, and it all cost me only $8, plus $9.99 for the mug. And worth every penny. All right, like I said, I have been out here before, but just to see the Billy the Kid Museum, and although it does look like there's some rain out there on the horizon, what I didn't get to do last time is what I love to do in every small town, which is try to go look at the old downtown. So I'm gonna go there next before I take off out of here. Oh, look at that. There's a couple of old abandoned gas stations in town, a couple of modern ones, and then right behind me, Fort Sumner's also home to the county courthouse for Baca County up there. It's a very humble building, which kind of gives you an idea of how many people are living out here. Got an anti-aircraft gun up there, which is good. Maybe they could shoot up into the storm and break up these clouds. And they got a pretty small downtown. That's City Hall right there off to our left. Some murals down here, some old stores. And I was very surprised to see this across the street, the Days End Movie Museum. What the heck? For the most part, obviously, this was a pretty small ranching community at the best of times. I like how they have these little murals right over here on these old windows. It remains a pretty small town today, if not smaller than ever. I like across the street over here, they have Addison Drug. Whoa, truck! Kind of your one-stop shop for Fort Sumner. I can see clothes and shoes in there. It is still a drugstore, and I have seen a few people walking out with ice cream cones, but look at this. The Days End Movie Museum. I did not remember seeing this the last time I rolled through town. Of course, they've got a cardboard cutout of Billy the Kid there in the front window. It's obviously not open right now, but it promises one-of-a-kind and unusual gifts. I'm out here in the summer. Maybe they're only open on the weekends or something like that, because otherwise I would think this would be exactly the time of year that they would be open. So strange. Look at that sign right there. Days End Movie Props, established 2003, saving our movie history. Member of the Movie Props Association. Well, they have indeed filmed a lot of movies out here in the New Mexico desert. I mean, there's so many ranches out here that have, you know, 250,000 acres and things like that. That when Hollywood wants to get out to a place with wide open spaces, there's really no better place to go than New Mexico. Well, if I ever come back, I hope to find out what's in that little movie museum. But for the moment, it's a long way to California, so I better start heading west. This is kind of cool, actually. I'm glad I didn't give up on Fort Sumner just from that area by City Hall, because I turned the corner on US 84 and there's a bunch more buildings down here. And although a bit faded and past their prime, I guess you would say, I love checking out any old downtown full of historic buildings. There's definitely a certain vibe to it, a certain charm, kind of a certain spirit, I guess you would say, to the place. Clearly at one point they were getting a lot more tourists out here, probably for Billy the Kid, or there was a lot more traffic along US 60 and US 84 through here. Because not only do they have these sort of faded old Western murals everywhere, coming into town on US 60 I saw a bunch of faded old, kind of abandoned or repurposed old motor courts, right? Just like you would see on classic old Route 66. And then look at this little old Western building, flanked by cowboy cutouts. Look at this around the side. There's a whole little mock Western town back here. And obviously the business is no longer open, but the sign over yonder, back here behind the yards and actually behind some of these false buildings over here, is a real building, the Tumbleweed Trail gift shop and souvenirs. But yeah, I think these facades, they look older than the business itself, so clearly they're hoping for tourists, even if they're not getting very many of them. Dude, I love that. That is the town grocery store across the street there, Dave's Grocery, and then across the road, across the highway really, that is the old bowling alley, the Bowl-O-Matic Lanes. Pretty cool. And then the Silver Dollar Trading Post right next to it, which is now more of sort of an antique shop kind of thing. Pretty cool. Always worth stopping in these small towns and seeing what there is to see. All right, the fastest way on to Albuquerque and therefore onto the interstate and onto California would be going up to Route 66 again. But I have opted for the road less traveled. I'm gonna keep heading west on US 60 for now to sort of delay my reunion with the interstate. See if there's any more small towns or anything to meet up with up ahead. It's kind of funny, after being on Route 66 for so long, right, your eye gets trained to looking for old motor courts and old filling stations, old diners and things like that. So when you turn off on another US highway like US 60 here and you start seeing them everywhere, you realize, oh yeah, there were a lot more US highways back in the day than just Route 66, and it was the same story. They were all bypassed by the interstate for the most part. But all along them, just like Route 66, there are so many forgotten little towns, forgotten little motor courts, gas stations. I just want to get out and explore them all, right? The road's less traveled, you know. There's no caravan going down US 60 today. Well, there's a caravan of one. It's just us. Rolling across the west in a wagon train of one. Boy, look at that storm right there. I hope we don't just end up right in the center of that. I'll tell you what, the rain and the water hasn't really taken away anything from the romance of this part of the road. It's amazing going through these tiny little places where You can see there used to be hotels, post offices, gas stations, just life. You never go through places like that without thinking of the people who moved out here or invested their money out here, thinking they were gonna make this business like successful with the highway coming through, you know, all these little mom and pop places, you know. Some of them now are just crumbled into dust and there's no longer any signs or legible paint. Just forgotten, lost in the pages of time. Oh my gosh, so much water out here. Potholes the size of everybody's mother-in-law. They're like little ponds. Ooh. Oh no, I can see my windshield crack getting bigger, dude. Casualty of the road. So annoying. I'm not very happy about that. Literally been watching it centimeter by centimeter, just creeping across. I'm assuming tomorrow that's gonna be going right in front of my face, so I couldn't find anyone to replace it. Tucumcari, so, well, not without shipping a windshield. So, gotta cruise on home and worry about it then, I guess. She'll hold together. You hear me, baby? Hold together. Dude, never underestimate New Mexico, man. Holy cow. It looked like I had gone through the big storm and there was just a little storm left. That little storm turned out to be this long, crazy, wild storm. There's so much water on the highway. People were hydroplaning. Well, the few people that were out here. That was a steering wheel clutcher. Then look at this. Just as soon as it came, it was gone again. And we're out here in the wilds with nothing. I love this US 60, man. Now that we didn't get struck by lightning, I pulled over and had a little breather for a second. We could pull on in to the next town. All right, this is kind of funny. I've actually met backup with US 54, which if I'm not mistaken, just rolls right back to Tucumcari if I went the other way, but also at the crossroads is the town of Vaughn, New Mexico, which actually bills itself as the crossroads of New Mexico because you can see 54, 60, and US 285 all cross here, as well as it being an important railroad crossing from back in the day, an important cattle town before that. And I can already see a bunch of relics of the past just from the outskirts of town, a bunch of little motels, the old gas stations fallen into, man, absolute disrepair. And it just occurred to me as I was standing out here that if it weren't for the romance and mystique of the name Route 66, the Tucumcari itself, where I woke up this morning, wouldn't look much different. It's not all desolate though. Look at this old motel here. The Bel Air Motel is still open. Looks like there's a few guests in here. Looks pretty clean. As you can see, the highway heyday, at least out here in Vaughn, is a thing of the past. It's quite a window onto that past though. Look at that frickin' neon sign over there for the Ranch House Cafe. Look at that Sputnik up on top. And then they obviously pumped a lot of gas in this town because there's an abandoned gas station about every 5 feet on this stretch anyway. It's the kind of stuff that highway connoisseurs' dreams are made of. Holy crap, man, this is like mid-century gas station paradise. But of course, before Vaughn was a highway town, it was indeed a railroad town. And with this many kind of highway remnants all up and down the road here in town, it's kind of making me wonder if there's an older railroad downtown hiding around here somewhere. To my surprise though, driving around, I haven't really found that old kind of classic courthouse square looking old Western railroad town that I thought I was gonna find in Vaughn. Although there are a lot of old Western buildings. The streets aren't even paved going down here towards the railroad tracks. Oh, dude. I think I may have stumbled across it. Look at that. That looks like an old gas station right there. And then look at this. This is like something straight out of a movie, dude. Wow. I was not expecting this. Look at that old hotel, probably, I imagine. Here's an old general store. You can still read the writing above the doorway. This is insane. Dude, if these buildings were anywhere else, if this architecture was anywhere else, this would be like an amazing little hipster kind of old town area. Normally cruising through little towns like this, you usually see a sign on the main highway like historic downtown this way. In this case, there was no sign. There isn't even a road. Look at this. There's all gravel out here. Oh, that is crazy, dude. This is seriously some serious ghost town stuff. I mean, there's plenty of people living right across the street from this. That just makes it all the more eerie. Like the entire downtown is abandoned. Whole blocks of buildings just empty, vacant. Definitely not what I was expecting to find. I don't know what I was expecting, but not that. That's crazy. Must have been one good looking town in its heyday though. A lot of cool architecture. Or maybe they're actually laying in a new road. So you see that water truck there, laying it down on the gravel. Although I don't know why, that rainstorm's gonna catch back up with us and make these roads plenty wet in a couple minutes. Yeah, look at this. See, normally this is where I get out and I walk around up and down the town, but this is so eerie and so freaky that for once I'm like, you know, I'm happy in the car. Dude, I mean, this is crazy. This looks like your quintessential classic, like Western movie, Western town. And then, you know, it probably had even more life pumped into it in the 50s and 60s, the heyday of the American highway. Dang. I mean, how cool looking would this place be if it was fully armed and operational with all these old original Old West buildings around, the old general store? This is wild. I actually feel a lot more like I've just walked on to a movie set than I'm in an actual living and working town, right? People still live here in Vaughn. I guess they just don't live downtown anymore. This is a perfect example, though, of why traveling Route 66 is so important, right? You don't think that your dollars, buying a couple of coffee mugs here and there, staying in a mom and pop every once in a while, make a big difference, but they do. Because if it wasn't for that, this is what Tucumcari would look like. This is what Williams, Arizona would look like. Without visitors, the towns would just dry up. Boy, what a special thing the American small town was, like in their heydays, right? It's amazing when you see like a healthy small town still. Here all I see are old kind of forlorn motels for sale, old empty gas stations. Look at that over there, the Western Motel. Imagine back in the heyday when that neon was lit up, beckoning people into this little place. And that's your absolutely classic old highway business, right? You got the gas station with the little store right here, which is probably how the business started. It's got a very nice mid-century slant to everything. And you've got your filling station connected to your little motel courtyard. And all you need is your cool neon sign to draw in the travelers, and they can come out here and stay on their family vacations, use the old ice machine, or maybe when things calm down of an evening, cross the highway for a Schlitz over there in one of those old saloons. Dang, man, Vaughn, New Mexico. I don't know if I'll ever come this way again, so I'm just trying to soak it in here for a moment. Pretty wild. Anyway, because of all the rains and stopping at every little forlorn town that I possibly can, I have lost quite a bit of daylight. Albuquerque is still several hours away, and I really don't have a plan for how far I'm going or where I'm gonna stay tonight, so I better get behind the wheel and at least connect back up with the interstate and figure that out. Dude, 50 or 60 miles of driving later, and I finally found some place familiar to stop. Right alongside old Route 66 and modern day Interstate 40, it is Klein's Corners. Dude, on the one hand, it feels like Lennon and I were just here the other day, and on the other hand, oh, it feels like it's been so long. So much has happened in such a short time, but we're back, finally back from a crazy detour on old Route 66. And now my mission is clear: to get on I-40 and to head westbound through and hopefully past Albuquerque. I really have to make some tracks back towards California and home. After all, I have a very beautiful wife to escort to her sister's wedding. Believe it or not, yes, even I have a mother, and she does like spending time with me. Pretty cool side trip today, though. Pretty cool adventure. I mean, I knew kind of what to expect with Billy the Kid's grave and the museum down there. Then again, it's one of those places where you can never really see it all. There's so much packed into that weird little building, and it was fun taking the road less traveled today, stopping in some pretty unusual little small towns, driving through the storms and open road. And dude, coming up from freaking Vaughn and a little town that you didn't see called Encino, I can see why Klein's Corners has been so popular since 1934. And when you consider all those other gas stations we saw today that were about the same age as this place, you see the contrast between how Klein's Corners is doing, which, by the way, if you've never seen inside, go back a couple of weeks, you'll see there's quite a bounty of stuff inside of this place, and 2 gas stations here. There's one on the other side as well. You really see the contrast between something like Klein's Corners and something like all those little gas stations down in Vaughn. The interstate took from many, but it gave to some. Most of all, it gave us something that I have not experienced today, which is speed. I gotta make my way westwards as quickly as possible now. I think there may still be a little wiggle room for adventure on the way back to Southern California, where no doubt I'll have to lay low for a while to financially recover from this crazy 2-month experiment out here. And if you'd like to help me do that and like to help me get back on the road as soon as possible for even more adventures, first of all, you can help me out for free by just liking and sharing this video with a friend you think would enjoy it. You could subscribe, click the notification bell so you see those future adventures. Plus, we got a merch store with the world's greatest hot sauce in it. This beautiful hat that's sitting on top of my head. You could have one just like it, a Kindred Spirit hat, a Random Land hat where the R stands for adventure. Get a signed copy of my book. We got magnets, we got all kinds of stuff and more stuff on the way, hopefully very soon. And if you're in a position to help even more and get us back on the road even faster, help me repair that windshield, you can join us on Patreon. All the links are down below in the description. I gotta head inside Client's Corners now, guys, because I have got to use the restroom, resupply myself with Dr. Pepper, or maybe some espresso or something. And that's all for now. We'll see you guys further on down the road. But for now, we've done our duty. You can go home and sleep well. Dude, that, for whatever reason, felt like such a long drive. Honestly, it's much slower as the little highways are compared to the interstate. They are much more interesting. There's so much more to look at, and there's so many more places to stop, and I didn't want to just stay at some like faceless corporate hotel tonight. So I was pretty stoked to find out that right here in Grants, New Mexico, almost all the way to Arizona, well, mostly, the old 1950s Lariat Lodge has been remodeled now as the Southwest Motel. There's plenty of abandoned old original motels up and down the street here, up and down Route 66 in Grant, and a couple that were functional on my last couple trips, but never one that I would have felt comfortable sleeping in until now. So we're not losing the flavor today, and I can finally motel and sleep well. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching. I love you all. See you later.